This video is for Chapter 3, Lesson number 8. In this lesson, we are going to divide decimals by decimals. Please open your textbook to page 240. This should actually change to 240, please. Go ahead and get your materials ready and turn the recording on when you're set to take notes. There's a special trick that we have to follow when we're dividing by decimals. When we divide by decimals, we need to change the divisor, the number out front, into a whole number. We can't actually divide by an actual decimal. In order for us to do this, we're going to multiply the divisor on the outside as well as the dividend, the number inside, by the same power of 10. Then we'll just divide like we're working with whole numbers. So let's talk about these powers of 10. Powers of 10 are like when I say take 5 times 10 and we get 50. If I took 5 and multiplied by a second group of 10, I would get 500, because that is the same as saying taking 5 times 100. 10 times 10 is 100, or 500. Oops, I forgot the 0 up here. So if I multiplied by 5 by a third group, it would be the same as taking 5 times 1,000. The same idea then applies to decimals. If I took 5/10 and multiplied by 10, my decimal would move one place to the right and I would get 5. If I took 5/10 and multiplied by 100, I would get 50, because my decimal would swoop back 2 times, just like what we did in Chapter 2. Now up here, it swooped back 1 time. Multiplying by 10 makes me richer. If we looked back here, remember the decimal on the 5 is right here, so we swoop it back one place and we'd fill it with a 0. Same with multiplying the 5. If I multiply by 100, I got to move 2 swoops. So the same concept applies to our decimals and whole numbers as it did in the fractions. If I do something to the divisor, I have to also do it to the dividend. So let's take a look at this. Here we have a problem where they want us to divide 1 71/100 by 9/10. So let's start with an estimate. 1 71/100 is almost 2. And 9/10 is very close to 1. So 2 divided by 1 will give us 2. So when we look at this, 9/10 is our divisor and 1.71 is our dividend. It would really be nice to change this 0.9 to the whole number 9. Well, we can do that as long as we're fair to both numbers. If I wanted to get that decimal to swoop back a place, I would need to multiply by 10 because I need it to move one decimal place. Well, then to my dividend in here, I have to do the same. The decimal will move from between the 1 and the 7 to behind the 7, or changing it to 17.1 instead. Now we can just follow our regular rules. The decimal comes up to the top, and we would say that 9 goes into 1 0 times, 9 goes into 17 just 1 time. Bring down the 9 and subtract and we get 8. Then we would bring down the 1, and 9 goes into 81 9 times. 9 times 9 is 81. We subtract and get 0. So our answer is 1 9/10. That is very close to our estimate of 2. So this makes a lot of sense for us. Let's try another one. Here we have 2 64/100. Well, that's awfully close to 3. And 6/10, that 6 is big enough to push that 0 to a 1. So my estimate would be 3 divided by 1, or 3. Now, in order for me to get this 6/10, my divisor, to be a whole number, I need my decimal to swoop back one place. So that means I'm going to multiply by 10 to make a whole number. Well, the dividend says if you're going to make him 10 times bigger, I want to be 10 times as bigger as well. So that decimal is going to move back behind the 6. So we're going to multiply the dividend 2.64 by the same power of 10, just to be fair. So we can see the swoops here on our numbers. So the decimal comes up here on top between the 6 and the 4 now. And actually, let's just skip and go over here and write it together. So our 0.6 gets divided by 2.64. And we want to multiply by 10 to move the decimal behind the 6. So we're going to multiply our dividend by 10 as well. So our decimal goes right up here on top. And now we can divide. We can ignore the 0 out here in front, so go ahead and cross it out. So 6 goes into 2 0 times. 0 times 6 is 0. Subtract and I get 2. I'll bring down the 6 now. 6 goes into 26 4 times. And 4 times 6 is 24. Subtract and I get 2. I'll bring down that last 4. And I know 6 goes into 24 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract and I get 0. So our answer then, our quotient, is 4.4. And is that reasonable compared to our estimate up here of 3? Yes, it is. Try a few more together. Let's get our division house set up. This is our first number. This is our dividend. Goes inside. And the 1.7 is our divisor out front. So I would like to get rid of this decimal point in my divisor, so I have to move it back one place value. So I'm going to multiply by 10. So this also has to happen to my dividend. So I bring my decimal to the back and I go put it straight up on top so I don't forget where it belongs. Let's do the division. 17 goes into 5 0 times. 0 times 17 is 0. Subtract and I get 5. Now I'll bring down the 4. 17 goes into 54. Well, I'm going to do some chicken scratch down here. 17 times maybe 3. 7 times 3 is 21, carry the 2, and 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5, 51. Wow, that's really close. Let's use it. So let's put the 3 up there, and I know that's 51, and I'll subtract and get 3. Now I can bring down the 4. Hey, this is looking good. I know that 17 plus 17, or 2 groups of 17, gives me 34. So that would be 2 groups of 17, makes 34. Subtract and I get a remainder of 0. And I've used all my numbers up here in my dividend, so I am done. So believe it or not, I started with 2 decimals and my answer is actually a whole number. My quotient is 32. And I can drop the decimal because it's sitting back here, and we usually don't keep the decimal if we get a whole number. Let's try another one. So starting out with this next problem, we have 8.424, and we're going to divide by 36 hundredths. Well, how many decimal swoops do we need to make? We need to make 1, that's 10, and another group of 10. 10 times 10 is 100. So if I move the decimal back 2 places, in the divisor, the dividend said, hey, make me 100 times bigger too. So we move back our decimal, and now the decimal place needs to be above the 2 and the 4. So let's get started. 36, because I can drop the 0 out in front, goes into 8 0 times. And now I'm going to bring down the 4 and 36. Gosh, can I get 2 groups? I'll try some chicken scratch here. 6 times 2 is 12. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 72. That's pretty close. We're going to go with that. So So we get 72, and I subtract. 4 minus 2 is 2, and 8 minus 7 is 1. And 12 is less than 36, so I'm good. Now I'll bring down the other 2. So if 2 groups gets me to 72, I wonder what 4 groups would give me. So I'm just going to try that. 24, carry the 2, 12, 13, 14. Too big, so I'm going to have to go to 3 groups. So 36 times 3 is 18. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 108. Seems small, but it should work out for me. So once we multiply and get it down here, now we can subtract. Well, this one's not very fun. I can't take 8 from a 2, so I'm going to have to borrow and make that 12. 12 minus 8 is 4, and 1 minus 0 is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So now I still have one more 4 to bring down, and 36. Well, hey, I already saw this over here. 36 times 4 was 144, so I know I'm going to take out 4 groups. I get 144, and I have no remainder. And notice my 4 is behind the decimal. So our quotient this time is 23.4. This next one is a little bit different, and you might actually want to do rewriting, and I'll show you why. So let's set it up. We have 0.0063 in my division house, and 7 thousandths out in front. This one requires a lot of swoops, and we're going to have a lot of extra zeros. So we need to get this decimal behind the 7, so I'm going to multiply by 3 groups of 10, which is 1,000. So I'm going to do the same to my dividend, 1, 2, 3, being very careful to make sure I swoop in between the numbers, not onto a number. And now we have all these extra zeros. This 0 can go away, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. It's probably a really good idea to rewrite it. So it's going to be 7 divided into 6.3. And now we can put the decimal on top. And now look at this problem that looks so complicated up here. Look how simple it really was once we used our powers of 10. So yay for powers of 10. So let's get started. 7 goes into 6 0 times. 0 times 7 is 0. Subtract and I get 6. And I would like you to bring down the 3. And 7 goes into 63 9 times. Gives me 63. And I subtract and get remainder 0. So our quotient is 9/10. For a problem that looked pretty scary, it turned out to be pretty nice after all. Just when we think we have division under our belts, we often get thrown another curve. Sometimes, when we line up our numbers by place values as we divide, we find out that there's not enough digits or place values in the number. So we're going to solve that just like we do when we have missing numbers in subtraction or addition. We're going to annex or add zeros. Remember that word annex means add. So let's get going with an example so you can see what I mean. Here we have the number 52, and we're going to divide by 4/10. So we're going to start off by moving our decimal place back 1 place. We're going to multiply by 10. Well, 52 doesn't have another decimal place. So we have to put the invisible decimal in, and then to give us place value, we make our swoop, and we need to fill that swoop with the 0 then. So let's do that together. Let's cross this one out. Let's do it together. So we have 0.4, and we're dividing into 52. So the 52 does have a decimal. It's just invisible right there. So to get rid of the decimal, we multiply by 10. So we have to swoop and multiply by 10. Well, there's no number there, so we fill it in with a 0. And then we put our decimal up on top. So now we can do our work. 4 goes into 5 once. We subtract, we get 1. We bring down the 2. 4 goes into 12 3 times. And 4 times 3 is 12. Subtract, I get 0. But I still have this 0 here. You have to bring it down and use it. 4 goes into 0 0 times. 0 times 4 is 0. Subtract and we get 0. So there's no more numbers to bring down, so we're done, and our quotient is 130 then. Let's try another one. And I think it would be a good idea for us. I'll just draw it out and then we'll do some examples together. When we have 18 hundredths divided into 9 thousandths, I need to move my decimal place back 2 times, so that's 100. I'm going to multiply by 100, and I'm going to do this again here, and now the decimal will be sitting right in front of it, and it changes our number to 9/10. So over here now, I'll rewrite it. We have 18 as the whole number because we multiplied by 100 and got that decimal back. And inside here we'd have 0.9. This 0 is not really here yet. When we do our work, you're going to see where it comes in. 18 goes into 0 times, and we write 0, subtract, and bring down the 0. Then we bring down the 9, and 18 goes into 9 0 times. So 0 times 18 is 0. We subtract and we get 9. And now we need to annex or add this 0 at the end because we should be able to go in there at least some amount. So we need to add zeros when we don't have digits to work with. So we bring down the 0, and 18 can go into 90 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. Carry the 4. 5 times 5 is 5, plus 4 is 9. So we subtract and get 0. So our quotient then is 5 hundredths. Let's look at another example. Here we have 11 2/10 divided by 7 hundredths. So we're going to have to multiply to get rid of this decimal on the 7 hundredths by 100. So we're going to have to multiply 11.2 also by 100. So let's take our swoops. We're going to go back 1, 2 place values, and we're going to go back here on the 2. There's a place, or a digit for a place value. However, we need to add a 0 to fill the empty space. Remember, if I multiply by 100, I have to multiply by 100 on the dividend. So we're going to add this 0. I'm going to rewrite this on my own just to show you. That's the numbers that they originally gave us. I need to swoop back once, twice, so I have to do that over here on my dividend as well. So the book went ahead and just filled in that 0 ahead of time because they knew that was going to happen. So let's rewrite our problem so we don't have the swoops in our way. So now we're going to have 7 divided into 1,120 because our decimal came all the way to the end. So my decimal point's here and I'm going to put it up on top. So 7 goes into 0 times. Bring down the 1. 7 goes into 11 once. I get 7, subtract. I have to borrow. And 11 minus 7 is 4. I'm going to switch colors. Bring down the 2. 7 goes into 42 6 times. Subtract and I get 0. And don't forget this 0, I have to bring it down. 7 goes into 0 times. 0 times 7 is 0. So I've used up all my digits up here in my dividend. And I don't even need to add anything over here because my decimal ended on its own. So our quotient is 160. I can drop the 0 out in front because we usually don't keep zeros in front of whole numbers. and we can drop the decimal point because we don't usually keep a decimal when it's just a whole number without anything behind it. So let's try some of these together. This is 5.6 divided by 14 thousandths. So I need to move my decimal back once, twice, 3 times. So that's 3 groups of 10. So that's by 1,000. So I'm going to make 3 swoops over here and move my decimal out here. So to hold the place value, I have to add zeros. And my decimal will go on top. So that's a lot of stuff on here. So I'm going to go back and get rid of things and rewrite it neatly. So we're going to have 14 divided into 5,600. And I'll put the decimal up on top. Now let's get started. 14 goes into 5 0 times. 5 minus 0 is 5. Bring down the 6. And 14, how many times? I'll try maybe 4 times. 4 times 4 is 16. Carry the 1. Hey, I lucked out. 1 times 4 is 4, plus 1 is 5. It's 56. So it has 4 groups of 14, and that gives me 56, and I have 0. But I'm not done yet. I still have 2 place values that I have to take care of. Those zeros are important. You can't just ignore them. 14 doesn't go into 5,600 4 times. It's going to be bigger than that. So let's bring down this 0. And 14 goes into 0 0 times. So 14 times 0 is 0. Subtract and I get 0. And again, I bring down the last one. This gets repetitive, but it's important because we don't want to lose place value. And it's 0 again, and my ant there. We end up with no remainder, which is nice. So, for our problem, our quotient then is 400. Let's try another one, and then I'll have you do one on your own. So let's take E, 6 and 24 hundredths divided by 200. Now 200 doesn't have any decimal places, so I don't have to do any swoops. I can just go ahead and start to divide. I bring my decimal right up to the top. So 200 goes into 6 0 times. Bring down the 6, or get 6 when I subtract. Bring down the 2. 200 goes into 62 0 times. So 0 times 200 is 0, and I get 62. Now I'm going to bring down the 4, and 200 will go into 624 3 times, because I know 3 times 2 is 6, and the 3 times the zeros are both 0. Subtract and I get 24. So now what? We can't leave remainders when we're working with decimals. We're just not allowed. So we can use that trick of adding zeros or annexing zeros. So we're going to bring down a 0, and I can take one group of 200 out of 240. I'm going to subtract and get 40. So I still have a remainder. I should go another couple places to see if I can get this to work out. So if I add another 0 or annex another 0 up here and bring it down, I have 400. Hey, this works out nice because 200 goes into 400 2 times. 2 times 200 is 400. I subtract, and now I have no remainder. So by sticking with the problem and adding and annexing those 2 zeros at the end, I was actually able to finish my problem. So my quotient is 312 10,000ths. So let's try this last one. 4 tenths is divided by 25. So kind of the same situation as this previous problem. I don't have to move any decimal places. The decimal's already behind the 5 and the 25, so I can just put my decimal right up on top. So 25 goes into 0, 0 times, multiply, we subtract and get 0, bring down the 4, 25 can go into 4 0 times, so I multiply and get 0, subtract and I get 4, and so now we need to pull out that trick. I'm going to annex or add a 0. Bring it on down. Let's clean that up. Sorry about that. 25 goes into 40. Can't go twice because 2 times 25 is 50, so we're going to only be able to take out one group. So I can't take 5 from 0, so I'm going to have to borrow from the 4 and make it 10. 10 minus 5 is 5, and 3 minus 2 is 1. So I really can't leave with a remainder. So I'm going to add another 0 or annex another 0 and bring it down. And this works out nice. I know 25 is going to go into 150 nicely. So 25 goes into 100 4 times, and 2 more quarters would give me the 50 cents. So I know it's 6. 6 times 25 is 150. And if you'd like, I'll prove it to you. 25 times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. Carry the 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 more is 15. So 150. And now I don't need to annex any more zeros because I got a remainder of 0 down here. So our quotient then is 16 thousandths. Let's take a look at a story problem then. How many times as many internet users are there in Japan than Spain? And they would like us to round to the 10th. So this is nice right here. When we round to the 10th, that means we have to go to the hundredths place value, one past it, so we can do our rounding. So if my decimal keeps going and going and going, because they said I get to round, I know I needed to just go one place value past it, the tenths, and then I can stop. So on here they took the 40.4, which is Spain, and divided that into Japan's. And remember, we're dealing with millions, so this doesn't sound like a lot, but it is in millions. I need to remove that decimal, so I'm going to multiply by 10, and I'll have to do the same over here on my dividend. So now we're going to take 404 and divide it into 1,274, and I can put that decimal at the end and put it up on top. And they told me I round to the tenths, so I'm going to go ahead and add 2 zeros because I need to go at least to the hundredths so I know what I can round by. So here they took 404 and it went into the 1 0 times, it went into 12 0 times, it went into 127 0 times. Then they found that 404 times 3 gave you 1,212. They subtracted and got 62. Then they annexed those zeros and brought down the 0, and they knew that they could only take out one group of 404, so they wrote that down, subtracted, and they got 216. They brought down that other annex 0, and they found that it went in there 5 times, and they got 2020. They subtract, and they still had a remainder, but because the problem said we can round to the tenths, I can stop because I'm at the hundredths. Now I can take this hundredths and check and do the rounding. So 3 and 15 hundredths then rounds off to 3.2. So there's about 3.2 times as many users of the internet in Japan than Spain. So there was a lot of different twists and turns in this lesson. You may have to go back and just watch parts of it again. If they tell you to round, then you can stop dividing when you get one decimal place past the place value that they want you to round to. So go ahead and try the problems on 243 and 244, 1 through 8, 10 and 14, or you can do the bonus of 1 through 14 all. Good luck, and come and ask questions when you need help.